1, 2, 3, 4. One-legged Roger and his one-legged mother lived in a house in downtown Atlanta.
To always be willing to see what you're finding out about the work from the people to whom you're presenting it. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes what you may be finding out is that the work that was very meaningful to you still isn't quite there in terms of being meaningful to others, that there's a core there, but there's a communicative element missing. Sometimes connection with the audience, with virtually the entire cast. Some people standing, formally greeting in costume, but some people just, in order to leave, had to, the notion was to make them be talking to people and starting to form those relationships, because it's just rude to put your head down and, walk through a bunch of people walking in the other directions. It's just human to talk. Sorry, it is in fact a Saturday still. Am I there? There you go.
Well, I know it's mandatory for us that we have to, there's got to be at least, I think now it's got to be 5 actors got to be out in the lobby at once.
Yeah, but what I love is the fact that I like the 5 in the lobby, but those people are there because it's part of their job.
Right.
What I loved about if you're leaving and, so you're not one of those 5 people, that you come through the lobby space as opposed to cut the more direct route through the stage and out.
Oh yeah.
That those contacts, those I'm in street clothes, just heading out, but the people who have taken the longest to come out of the theater are still coming out, because that's a one at a time kind of very narrow hall. And those conversations, the ones where you just sort of have the opportunity when somebody isn't in the wedding reception line, but is over at the bar, and you're having those conversations. And so things like that, I really do think are ways to listen to your audience. So that would be number one. I would steal from David Kersner a little bit of the, believing in the work. I would suggest making sure that you have some people you're talking to who are not automatically swimming in the very same water you're swimming in. I think it is helpful to have somebody who enjoys theater, enjoys work, enjoys attending, but is not interested in writing, acting, directing, who's part of the sounding board for everybody else. Now, whether that's on a board of directors, whether that's just sort of on a consulting / these are people I talk to and listen to basis, but somebody that you can kind of still talk to, listen to, and ask the harder questions of. The easy question is, how do you like it? The harder question is, why did this particular thing seem to fail?
Why do you think that this particular project failed, and is failed just a lack of quality, or is it that it didn't connect?
Yeah, and sometimes not even this particular project. Sometimes it can be as simple as, hey, Greg, you were out there. Why did that particular monologue not get an audience reaction? Or you were there. What was your, why was there silence when the lights went up at intermission? Because usually that's the automatic applause cue. What were you noticing?
Yeah.
And that very, very specific, because there's enough of a shared vocabulary. And then you're right, and that then can spring into the broader, why this project, why this take, why this series of decisions. But even hey, just a micro, there's something we're doing a little different, and what did you think about it? Mm-hmm. Not quite going to failure, because I thought it was a phenomenal success. But one example, in Romeo and Juliet, when everybody comes and discovers that Juliet is apparently dead. The monk is there, the parents are there, people are starting to come around, and there's the scene where the apparent corpse is in the bedchamber. One of the times that the tavern acted that, but the deliberate decision was made, hey, this emotive stuff, it seems a bit over the top.
Play it for comedy?
David, I thought that was brilliant. Mm-hmm. I thought it was one of the best things I had ever seen done about a play that I'm not particularly fond of. I thought it opened up an area of the play to me that I'd not seen before. Mm-hmm. But we talked about that one very specific thing, in part because I think Jeff was concerned about how will some long-term audience members think about reacting to that particular emotional scene mm-hmm. in that way. Am I running? Well, he knows what risks he's running, but is the risk coming to fruition that some longtime audience members will not like monkeying around with this in that fashion? And at least for this audience member, the answer was no. That's brilliant. That's great. I wish I'd seen it that way the first time. Maybe I'd like this play more.
Why don't you like Romeo and Juliet?
I have seen so many bad productions of that over the years. None of them at the tavern, by the way. Let me be clear. But that's just a play that I have seen on screen, including, by the way, versions that I dearly love. I think the Franco Zeffirelli movie is brilliant. And it could not be further removed from the way the play is done live. I mean, those are two entirely different experiences. But I think what I don't like about it probably has less to do with the play and more to do with the aura that surrounds it, of people listening to people talk about the play and the way that it is kind of cliched. This is, again, to Judy and me, this is a play that is about adults making bad decisions that affect the lives of children when the children are used as chess pieces and basically ignored. It is a very, very, every adult character in the play who seems to be offering advice, whether it's the friar or the nurse, is giving bad manipulative advice. And it is affecting these kids. Very rarely do you see that story on stage.
Mm-hmm.
What you see is a story of young love and the adults simply not understanding it. And if only they had not had this conflict surrounding them, everything would have been different. To me, that story, number one, is not the one Shakespeare wrote. And number two, is not all that interesting. And number three, is far from truthful. So that play I despise. And that play I've had to watch too many times.
Gotcha.
It's the play. I mean, commit to the choice, commit to the choices, and be aware that not every choice to which you've committed in retrospect is going to have been the right one. Because they don't come pre-labeled.
No, they don't.
I got bankers, police, lawyers, exes chasing after me. Oh, they're never gonna get me now. And they say the world might end, and if it doesn't, I'll be free. Oh, they're never gonna get me now.
Absolutely.
'Cause I got you, and you are life.
What is it like to be a father who loves theater to have two boys that decide to do theater?
Absolutely frightening, absolutely wonderful. And I love that both sons have do it in a different way. My oldest is a very, very talented, in fact, award-winning lighting designer. Both of them have other jobs in addition to being actors and or involved in theater, in Greg's case, lighting design, and other backstage type things. Greg is a critical care paramedic. I mean, he's doing phenomenal stuff, especially in this time. But just has that. Loves being able to balance both sides of that. Stephen is an actor, is a magician, does improv, and then has sort of taught himself to do logistics, and now is doing sales in a technical arena as sort of the quote day thing. And they both love it. They both get that it's a job.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, I don't see them as dilettantes. And because I don't see them as dilettantes, I think it's just fascinating to watch them be able to play with, and I mean that in the most professional sense, to play within those spheres. And it's just, it truly is fun. It's because they went there and did the blocking and tackling to be able to do it, to understand it, to work inside it. And that's why I love it.
Because they have given to the demands of the job, that gives you as a father some assurance.
I think that's because they have. And then the other thing is, for each of them, these have proven to be, and I don't think Judy and I saw this one coming as much as we thought we did, but these have proven to be very transferable skills to other things they do in life. And that's been very, very useful. When Judy and I, kind of agreed to support a BFA program, and by the way, you're asking a chemist and a lawyer now to support a BFA program. The one thing we looked at is said, okay, we're with you so long as there's a real life core curriculum underneath it, core academic curriculum. I have nothing against the conservatory approach, but I would not have funded a conservatory approach. My goals for that child were to be exposed to the standard undergraduate core curriculum. He was down with that. That worked out well. And those communication skills that he pulled from his BFA, and again, that being present, the noticing what you have to do on stage can play over into your life in the business world, has been very, very helpful for him. Greg, that attention to detail, that attention to figuring out and looking at how and why this series of lights does this, that these things have to happen in this order, that there is a process that this entire thing is going through, I suspect, have helped feed, his career from being an EMT to a paramedic to now a critical care paramedic to now even a critical care paramedic who writes a lot of protocols and training materials for people to become critical care paramedics. Well, a lot of that communication comes out of having to, as the lighting designer, communicate with everybody else on the crew and with whom you're working, how to make something happen, even down to having to write a lighting plot that somebody else, and series of lighting cues that somebody else is going to have to be able to work. It's been very interesting. It's been interesting to see how it feeds, and it's very easy to look back and say, those were terrific life lessons. That's a great trajectory to get there. I would not have thought that. God knows better than I do, and that's just another example of that.
Friends, Romans,
Friends,
countrymen, let me hear
Romans,
yours.
countrymen.
It's a crime, or it's a racket. It's not that, for sure. But I know ethically it can be hard sometimes to say, give us $100,000
Right.
to get a BFA in acting.
Yeah, and candidly, the reason, the way I would phrase the same thing, give us more money than you're comfortable with to take a 4-year communications degree and learn how to develop a skill set that is going to help you speak to people for the rest of your life. That ability to communicate, that ability to look in the eye, the ability to pay attention to somebody else, almost treating folks as scene partners in real life, the ability to transfer pieces of that toolkit, or let's do something that's at least connected to this truth. I would argue there's also a useful feedback loop going on, whereas you pay attention to the acting, it becomes a way that you can also look at your own behavior. It becomes a useful lens so that now, this thing I did on stage, I listened to that person in order to pick up the cues, and I mean the real cues, the emotional cues, the subtext that's going on in that moment. Hey, maybe when I get home with my partner, I ought to pay a little more attention. Maybe that being present isn't the worst idea that I've ever had. Or even more radical, maybe tomorrow when I'm at the day job that I hate, if I'm in the moment, if I'm more present, maybe I'll find ways. So I really do think there's more to it than, quote, acting.
And that's important to hear. I'm glad I'm talking to you about that. There is a conversation going on about whether it's an ethical degree. I definitely think it has worth and it has value. The dollar signs to what that they can achieve with the degree when they get out. What are you going to get from it is always a great conversation to have.
Yeah, and I think it is an important conversation to have, but I think the most important aspect of that conversation is one-on-one with the individual student and anybody involved in funding, which is, in my long-winded way of saying parents. I think the funding aspect of it is the reason I am allowed as a parent to a certain extent participate in a conversation about that with that young adult, about what that young adult is going to do.
I'm of the opinion that, figure it out, be an entrepreneur. The basic degree is a crime viewpoint from some of my peers I disagree with. and say, well,
Well, and again, not knowing enough from the inside of the Citadel to know what that argument is fully about. However, I'm obviously going to be very much more on your side of it, entirely on your side of it in terms of any attempt to say it's a crime. It offends me the way the word ethics gets tossed around. It offends me the way the word crime gets tossed around. Let's put crime aside as legitimate exaggeration for effect in this instance. Nobody's actually suggesting somebody get indicted and go to jail.
we're trying to steal your money for a ridiculous degree.
Ethics by nature involves comparing something to a standard.
Mm-hmm.
If there's not an agreement about what that standard is, it's very easy to have a disagreement about whether something is ethical, because you could both be looking at exactly the same behavior, describing it exactly the same way, and just be comparing it to two different types of rulers. One would see it as 9 because that person's looking at inches, the other at 27 because they're looking at centimeters. Is it a 27? Is it a 9? Yes. But I need to know what my measuring system is, what my ruler is. My ruler for something like paying money for an academic program or a degree is, has there been sufficient disclosure of what I'm getting? Is what I was promised would be happening, what is happening?
Mm-hmm.
Have I in any way tried to hide, lie about some of the fundamental things coming in that would impact the decision? And then at the end, people can make decisions. Now, that's obviously based upon my series of bias, but that's where my ethical ruler would be on that. And on that, the degree wins. Nobody is pretending that because of the diploma, you now get to be in the next James Bond film, the next Marvel film. Nobody is pretending that because of the certification, whoever the next August Wilson is going to be is going to cast you tomorrow. That would be where the ethical thing. But is it something that is not for everybody? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And it is the argument that something is not ethical unless it is for everybody, or unless we can guarantee a particular pool of results, has always struck me as an argument, and anything based upon that has always struck me as a fundamental misunderstanding of ethics, either an attempt to impose a template of guaranteed results, which is impossible, or to impose a paternalistic, I know what's best for you and I'm going to make you do it. Oh, and by the way, I'm not funding it. I don't have a legitimate interest in or background with you, but I'm going to tell you that you can't do this because I don't like the things that I see, and I can't give you a rule or a series of standards for that. Now, probably 90% of what you're watching when I react to that is, hey, I have a degree from law school. Those conversations happen there too. You want to talk about the possibility of debt. You want to talk about the possibility of crippling debt for a lot of people in an area where people really, I would think, understand even less what some of the odds against success are, because some of the statistics, well, are goofy in the same way that they are goofy in your profession.
I would not have thought that. I would have thought that law and medicine are your very, very difficult to get to the cream of that crop, but that's a straight line path.
Yeah, but here's, I guess, the difference. You know what they call the guy or gal who graduated last in a medical class? Doctor. You know what they call the guy or the gal who, really didn't make it in law school? Well, they just don't call. So, I mean,
what is the exchange of your degree?
right.
And if it's transparent,
Mhm.
and if it's skill-based, and you will learn these things,
You will have the opportunity to learn these things that will be presented by people who understand these things.
Mhm.
I can't even ever promise you you're going to learn. I can promise you you're going to be given the appropriate opportunity. That's all. But that's huge.
yeah, so you're helping me articulate the outside. What bugs me or gets me tongue-tied is not being able to justify it has worth.
Sure it does.
The degree in itself in the liberal arts has worth. The finances around it are goofy.
Finances around education are goofy.
But being unethical would be, no, being unethical is promising something that clearly will not happen.
Yeah, at that point, or really, 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 really lying. And when I say lying, the reason I put all the reallys in front of it, the word has become devalued. When I say lie, I mean lie. I don't mean failing to predict the future in such a dark, dire way that no sane person would undertake the risk. I mean lying. I mean saying 90% of our folks are on who graduate from our program are on Broadway, starring in musicals within 3 years, when that's not even close to right. That's a lie. Saying that we equip people so that they can that's not a lie.
No. Saying
that we have alums on Broadway or people who've attended our program on Broadway in every show at a particular point in time, that's, if that's true, that's not a lie. But saying, but that implies that everybody went, no, it doesn't. But it really does come back to, for me, David, if I'm going to accuse you of an ethical violation, the ethical principle that I am saying you have violated needs to be articulated. And it needs to be articulated clearly. And if it cannot, then I need to understand that what I'm saying is I fundamentally disagree with you. I may fundamentally disagree with you emotionally, but I'm not really attacking your ethics because I haven't defined a standard. I'm just saying I disagree.
Come
If
I
it
to
were
speak
so,
at Caesar's funeral.
it
He
was a
my
grievous
friend,
fault,
faithful and just to me, but
and
Brutus said he was
grievously
ambitious,
hath
and Brutus
Caesar.
One of the words that in my household, the one that Judy and I are the parents in growing up, the four-letter F word that our kids learned very quickly never to say around us was fair, F-A-I-R. Because whenever, and we explained this to them ad nauseum, when everybody, exactly. I said, okay, you just told me that's not fair. You've added nothing to telling me that you disagree. You haven't told me that I'm inconsistent with something I said in the past. You haven't told me that it is unjust, because here's the principle of justice that it violates. You haven't done any of those things. You haven't engaged with it. All you've done is tell me that you disagree. Don't waste your time. Don't waste my time with that. I assume you disagree. Now tell me why. And if why is it's not fair, then admit that you don't have a reason. Okay, so that's that. And by the way, you got to picture the 6 and 4-year-olds dealing with this. You want to see an example of bad parenting? It's unload all of this before.
No, I love it.
They grow into it. So great.
I think that would have been an ideal stage for me in my dramatics, as opposed to, because I told you so. Knock it off. Go to your room.
Yeah. Yep. Well, that would be the answer to fair. But So years later, when they're in elementary, these conversations start. Years later, one of them is away. I know which one, but I'm not going to say, is away at college, has a tough day, phone call home. Judy winds up being the person having the call because she always does, because I don't answer the phone because I'm a jerk. And the child is doing, I've had it. It's been a horrible day. I'm however many hundred or whatever miles away. You can't stop me. I'm going to say the F word. It wasn't fair.
Mm-hmm.
It was just sort of the hearing echoed back to us the, kind of picture rebellious late teen, early 20 kid saying to a parent, I'm going to say the F word, and then saying fair was just absolutely our family and absolutely a moment that we treasure from them.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because they knew it. They had it defined.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And they knew it irritated me. Let's not lose sight of that. The word had emotive power.
Yes. Yes.
I got bankers, police, lawyers, exes chasing after me. Oh, they're never gonna get me now. And they say the world might end, and if it doesn't, I'll be free. Oh,
Because there is no one size fits all on what constitutes fair use, what's parody, how, in what sense I can use somebody else's work. Now, as a board member, not practicing law, and when I am a board member, I'm affirmatively not practicing law. Mm-hmm. Something that confuses every board member and every artistic director, but it's kind of like, look, I am a lawyer. I am not practicing law here. When I'm in this boardroom and we're talking about this stuff, I'm talking as a fellow board member. I am not giving a legal opinion. I'm not doing research. I am not, hey, I don't represent you. I don't represent the company. I'm one of you. And part of the reason is when I am giving legal advice, I want to be able to give it dispassionately. I want to be able to look at it with a very, very clear eye. I can't do that about my own conduct. And I'm in here being part of that conduct. Anyhow, sorry, side note. But
no, that's helpful. I don't think a lot of people know that.
Well, no, and a lawyer who joins a board will typically explain that to the board early and often.
Can I eat a bowl of cereal naked in front of an audience? That kind of stuff?
Yeah, and if you've decided that you want to consider doing that, I would very definitely talk to someone in the community who's a lawyer, because somebody need to look at a city ordinance to see if there's a licensing requirement that applies to that. That's not just a one size fits all. There's such a thing as a First Amendment. I can do whatever. There are a lot of nitty gritty details that come down into that. If you're leasing the space, that may violate your lease. And by the way, frequently it won't be there. But the one time it is going to be the one time you didn't look. So just think about those things. There are some important things, though, up front. One is, if you need to try to figure out when you need a lawyer and need legal advice, I really would try to find the Jeff Watkinses, the David Kersners, the people who are out there now with growing theater companies. When were the times you needed legal advice? Who are people you've worked with? Look at the bar associations, associations of lawyers in your community. Frequently, there are folks who are volunteering time to help put together a, quote, 501c3, close quote, application, a tax exempt status application. If you wish for this thing to actually be an entity and a company and to exist for a period of time, as opposed to we want to put a show on and then we want to see if that worked and then decide whether to do some more work together. One of the things that is kind of interesting in the tax law that I did not know was there until a non-lawyer pointed it out to me during the time I was on a board is there is the opportunity for an organization with a 501c3 certification, an organization that the IRS has decided is tax exempt, to help in a fiscal sponsorship relationship, and that's actually the term in the code and the regs, fiscal sponsorship, to help somebody who is in the process of getting that certification or determination to be able to raise tax exempt funds by doing it under the guidance and oversight of the entity that is already tax exempt. The Atlanta Shakespeare Company did that for the Weird Sisters when the Weird Sisters were just forming. And as a member of the board of the Atlanta Shakespeare Company, I met with from time to time the Weird Sisters. We talked with them about where they were in the application process, made sure they were moving forward, made sure that they had found lawyers which were available. So the organization, the Atlanta Shakespeare Company, was a resource for them. The nonprofit community in Atlanta that included Lawyers for the Arts was a resource for them. And those resources are going to be available in many larger areas because lawyers are always looking for opportunities to do work in pro bono areas. You know, to make your own ethical determination about whether we're just playing off guilt or whether we actually genuinely being involved in our community, genuinely enjoy being involved in our communities. One of those two is true, probably both. So they'll be out there and find them.
Gotcha. And we're back.
And we're back live or whatever. I tend to like explorations of an artist over time. We've talked about watching an actor grow up. Mm-hmm. You know, I like watching Shakespeare as a dramatist grow up. I like watching August Wilson's 10-play Pittsburgh cycle. I like reading August Wilson's plays that are not in the 10-play Pittsburgh cycle that came before he did that. I have a question for you, by the way. You've been kind enough to indulge me on what I like looking at on stage as a performer, and speaking strictly as a performer now. So not as an instructor, not as a professor, as a performer. What do you want from an audience? What do you look for in an audience member or as a group?
Openness, curiosity, palpable excitement, that energy of wanting to see, and they're participating, and maybe that's because that's what I want. Mm-hmm. So that's fun. What is hard is when the audience is, I guess it's not that they're presupposed to being judgmental, but I don't know if they know that it is a place where they can play and have fun with us. So, you know?
No, I agree. That's a great point. One of the things I've heard a number of the tavern actors talk about over the years, you know, as you well know, every February, Romeo and Juliet runs and runs and runs and runs. You can tell me if it's your experience too. Is that month can be particularly challenging on the main stage. So not talking about the education performances, but the quote main stage, because those audiences in particular that do tend to have even more people who've never been in the space before, more people who have decided this is a great around Valentine's time to get together and see this wonderfully romantic play, that they really do need the permission to laugh. They don't get that this is a play that has wonderfully comic moments at the front end. They are there to see serious Shakespeare and a love story, and until enough people in the room recognize that that's really not how that works.
The melodrama of the death is what I believe Jeff was trying to articulate in the text, in the vowels,
Sure.
and the Italian operatic aspect
Exactly.
of it. That even Scorsese does in a lot of his violence.
I was about to say, yeah, you're talking about Scorsese and Coppola, both. You're now talking about that, that opera vibe.
De Palma as well. There's this,
yeah.
And so there's one like the critic, the cynical would go, oh yeah, people dying, kids dying, very funny, har, har. Well, okay, yes, we're not saying that teenage death is funny. We're looking at this moment in the play in a very particular way.
Right.
The first act is a comedy, and
Exactly.
Juliet's very smart, and she's surrounded by all these people, and there can be that potential. So, and then as you articulated, it got the polarity of people loving it and hating it was very extreme, which for me as a director and as an actor, I mean, that's just where I've lived. I'm an actor who gets polarity. When I was younger, I hated that. I wanted to have that universal thing. Now I love it. It means that I'm doing my job. The thing that I'm doing is making someone feel something. And I feel like I'm getting better at it.
See something, yeah. Feel something, see something,
Right.
Examine something.
Right.
You know, I don't think that in 2 Samuel 12 in the Bible, I don't think that David was actually King David, not David Weber. The other David was
Right.
actually, all that in love with, really liked Nathan, the prophet Nathan, at the moment that the prophet Nathan used the power of story to open King David's eyes to David's own behavior. David has slept with Bathsheba, killed Uriah the Hittite, done some just horrible things. We call them sins. And Nathan comes to him and tells him tells the king a story about one of his subjects, one of the king's subjects who's been abused by this rich man who's taken from the poor man the only thing that he had, his small ewe lamb. David is outraged about it and goes, that man should be, punished. That man deserves death. And Nathan goes, you are that man. Because David, for the first time, was able to turn the lens on his own conduct because of looking at the story and then see it as Nathan applied it back to himself. Well, I don't think he liked Nathan at that moment. Somebody may not like David Weber at that moment or William Shakespeare at that moment of having a particular behavior in which I indulge exposed to myself. That can be kind of uncomfortable. And it's good.
I agree. I agree. And I'm getting better at owning that a little bit more in terms of going, well, it's, that's not my job to be liked by the audience. My job is to give myself in service to the story.
Yeah.
And 12th night and doing it again, I had a great time. It was a pain because I had to go from Young Harris all the way down to
Right.
But it was worth it to be there, do the show for the student audience and have them enjoy it in a way that we were pretty fortunate with 12th night, this run with our audience, with our matinee audiences. We did have a buyout at the tavern for 12th night. And I don't remember what the company was, but it was interesting because we thought they think that they're just, what a waste of money, that they should have gone to Dave and Buster's, or that they do anything else except for see a Shakespeare play.
Mm-hmm.
But when we got done, everybody was so lovely and no one was running for the door.
Good.
And I got a sense that they actually enjoyed the show.
Yeah.
But you would have never known that. It's performing for them. In terms of what does it sound like? What does it look like when people are enjoying themselves? Laughter and smiles.
Right.
Mostly they were like,
they were watching serious theater and being educated by the process. And they were, if it was a buyout, an accompanied buyout, until the boss laughs.
yeah, you're right. And the boss is the person who brought him there. So you would think that they'd be like, try it.
No, you would hope. You would hope.
But the live stage, the audience is a great, for me as a performer, being on stage in front of an audience is that's the moment of where the contract happens. To do that part on stage for the audience, that's when I get to be in the other dynamic where I get to do my practice in that universe. So even a bad audience, I'll take. I'll take that because I'm in my practice. It's a very present moment to have something not be received by an audience member. And the bad habit would be to comment on that maybe in the past. And the gift is to be back at 12th night and to have a director like Jacqueline and say, David, don't comment on it. And I love that because she's right. She's like, you don't need to. Don't stop the show. Just keep going.
Yep.
It's like, don't comment on your mistakes. Don't comment on their lack of not getting it.
Yep.
Go to the people who get it. And I was like, yeah, cool. I like it.
But even there, that's a wonderful conversation to be able to be having because of a particular performance style. And what I mean by that is obviously,
because you can. Yeah.
Yeah, because you can comment, you need to be told the times where you should not.
I think what Jacqueline was doing was she was saying that I like seeing Toby on stage.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Be Toby. Don't be David.
Toby would not comment on this, and therefore,
So, and I love that. And maybe she was thinking something totally different. Like but I think that's what she was saying. Whereas, like, more Toby, less David habit.
There you go.
And that's what's great about going back to the tavern with being supported by people who get that building and also have a certain aesthetic or demand or barometer for what they find to be effective.
But I think you get that building and you get to build that building, going back to a little piece of an earlier conversation. I think you build that audience because of what you were talking about, listening to that audience and realizing that they're not always going to like you and you're going to learn things from the times they do and the times they don't. And I understand there are fans who are going to love everything you do. There are haters who are going to hate everything you do as well. But for that group audience, paying attention to them and honoring their choices too. You were asking them to pay attention to your choices. You then have the opportunity to watch their choices and let that inform your next series of choices. If instead the response is, the audience is stupid, they don't get it, what I was doing was terrifically meaningful, and this group of unappreciative boobs never should have been allowed through the doors, you're giving up an opportunity for growth. And I don't mean numerical growth. I mean growth in terms of trying to figure out where the communicative disconnect was, where things can be done differently, or whether they should be done differently.
Yeah, because you're right. You're articulating that wonderful moment, that space. Am I judging the audience, David, for the thing, or am I judging myself, David, for being self-deprecating in the thing? Whereas like the audience is wanting to see something totally different. Maybe. And my job should be, so when that is aligned, that is a beautiful moment for when the magic happens, when there is a communication between the audience, between something that happens. So it's not that don't do that. It's just listen for the audience and be mindful of, because I've seen the actors there that get into the habit of wanting to be liked so much that the choices fall. It's your responsibility to get me. And if you don't get me, you're a boob.
Yeah, there's, and again, I'm sure that's true in any company under any set of circumstances. I think when you see the same people acting together in multiple plays, you just have the opportunity to spot it more. The other thing is, and I'm not going to mention this actor by name because this is early at this actor's career and hitting it out of the park now on a nearly every time I see this performer, I'm just blown away. But when I first saw this performer, and a couple times at the tavern, a couple times at other places, there were 2 or 3 particular gestures and fallbacks that were in the toolkit that were overplayed. No matter what the character was, the character would have this particular hand habit.
Gotcha.
And it just and it wasn't something that the actor was doing, the performer was doing unconsciously. It was very, very obviously deliberate because it was milked in front of the audience on every time. Finally, that performer was cast as opposed to a comic role in a very, very serious role, and just, again, absolutely knocked it out of the park. But what was interesting to me was that I have never seen that actor do that comic toolkit piece again, even though I've seen that actor go on to do a whole bunch of comic roles and do them brilliantly. It was as if kind of the, hey, I can do this, replaced the need to have 2 or 3 crutches that people had liked before that now actor-performer brings in, whether it makes any sense for character or not. And again, as an audience member, it's really kind of fun to watch those types of things happen. It's really fun to watch people grow into their craft.
Are you thirsty for seeing anything on stage? Or do you think that maybe Atlanta as a whole, is there a gap that a company could really come in and do really well in Atlanta, do you think?
I have to believe the answer to that question is always yes. I have to believe that it is impossible for any city, however, quote, well-developed, mature its theater community is, it's including its community of people who go to theater, to absolutely have everything already covered. So the answer to that question always has to be yes. In terms of what that particular checkbox is, I don't know. I mean, I do know, by the way, that I really do thirst to go out and see live theater again. I miss it in this particular forced time of not being able to do it that we're going through right now. I miss bad plays. I miss good plays. Just the entire experience. But yeah, I think there will always be that opportunity. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know if there's room for somebody to come in and do the entire Neil Simon canon. I happen to think that might be kind of fun to watch.
Yeah.
I would love to see something like that, though. Those are still just fun plays, especially the early stuff nobody ever puts on anymore. But it's there may be a series of holes there, but we won't know what they are until somebody who has spotted it has the audacity to come on and try to show it. and do the proof of concept and put it up. But no, I absolutely cannot believe that in Atlanta, in New York, in Chicago, in Los Angeles, in London, pick your favorite city, pick your favorite theater community. I don't think any of them have all the bases covered. I think human experience is too varied. There are too many potential audiences, too much overflow between those, overlap and overflow between and among those audiences. Nobody can be so crowded. There's not room for one more really, really truthful company.
This won't be a one and done chat.
Good. Well, and again, it's not the first time you and I have chatted.
That's true. It's true, and I enjoy it.
As do I, my friend. As do I. Sorry, there's no food this time.
No problem. I think we should definitely leave though as we came in, and just leave our chairs.
There you go.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
One-legged Roger and his one-legged mother lived in a house in downtown Atlanta. One had the right and one had the left. Together they were happy as a two-legged man. Roger loved his gin, and now his mother's crying again. Oh, I wonder if they'll bury him with his wooden limb. He can take it to heaven and trade it in. Roger had a job in an old pawn shop till they put him in a movie about a Civil War son. He never went to war, but he had the battle wounds of Hiram with his musket at the Second Bull Run. Roger loved his gin, and now his mom.
Past. You haven't told me that it is unjust, because here's the principle of justice that it violates. You haven't done any of those things. You haven't engaged with it. All you've done is tell me that you disagree. Don't waste your time. Don't waste my time with that. I assume you disagree. Now tell me why. And if why is it's not fair, then admit that you don't have a reason.